The millionaire makes a shocking offer after seeing a black beggar asleep on his shoulder. Helen gripped the worn strap of her battered bag as the bus lurched forward, packed tight and stifling. The heat clawed at her skin, sweat slicking her neck, but she barely noticed. Her son, David, no more than 4, twisted in her arms, sobbing quietly. His dry lips trembled as he begged, "Water, please, Mum." The bus groaned with tension. Crowded faces turned, eyes sharp, cold, some filled with sneers. A woman muttered, "Keep that brat quiet," while a man snorted, "Some people just don't care." Helen's chest tightened. The crushing weight of their judgment sent a knot twisting deep inside her. Suddenly, the screech of brakes jolted the whole bus. The door slammed open, and in stepped Ryan, tall and sharply dressed, like he'd just walked out of a boardroom. His expensive leather shoes tapped against the grimy floor. His aura, calm, collected, almost untouchable, cut through the noise and stench. Everyone moved aside, eyes flickering with surprise. Who was this man in their chaos? Ryan's tailored coat flared in the sudden breeze as he scanned the crowd. That's when he saw David, cheeks streaked with tears, hands shaking with thirst. Like lightning, he stepped forward and lifted the boy into his arms. David's crying stilled as he clung to Ryan, a stranger's warmth seeping into his small frame. Helen's breath caught. Her heart hammered with a confusing thud. Gratitude, suspicion, and a flicker of something she couldn't name. Ryan's eyes met hers, soft, steady, but with shadows lurking just beneath. "My car broke down back there. I took the bus since it's faster," Ryan explained, his voice smooth but distant. "I couldn't ignore him. Couldn't ignore you." A hush fell over the bus. The loud whispers faded into stunned silence. Was this man really stepping into their mess like it was no big deal? Impossible. Yet here he was, offering something unbelievable. "I want to help. There are many women like you, struggling, invisible. I want to fund a center, a place where single mothers get support, real help." He spoke with hope, but his polished smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Helen's hands trembled around David's small body. The offer echoed in her mind, life suddenly dangling on a fragile thread of promise. But something about Ryan felt guarded, like a puzzle with a missing piece. Why his kindness? What did he want? The bus jolted again, doors scraped open to the street's harsh night. Outside, the city pulsed, a world full of hard truths and harder luck. Inside, Helen stood frozen, caught between fear and a hope so fragile it could shatter with a single word. Could she trust a millionaire who stepped into her chaos like an angel, yet carried secrets darker than the night? Her chest ached with the question, an ache sharper than the crowded bus, deeper than David's cries. She swallowed hard, heart thumping in a silent plea. What lies beneath that polished surface? And would it destroy the tiny seed of happiness Ryan's arrival might have planted? The city lights blurred beyond the windows, the night waiting to pull them all deeper into its tangled web. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Ryan's gaze lingered on Helen, a flicker of something indecipherable lurking just out of reach. A million thoughts cascaded through her mind. Could this be the hope she so desperately needed? But just as swiftly, thrusting itself in, the weight of Ryan's promise hovered in the air, fragile, hanging by the thinnest thread. Then, with an abruptness that shook the entire bus, the front door burst open again. A group of raucous teenagers surged in, laughter spilling into the tense atmosphere like gasoline on a fire. Their raucous energy sliced through the moment, sending a ripple of disapproval through the passengers. "Look at this loser!" one of them screeched, pointing at Ryan. His expensive suit, a stark contrast to their ripped jeans and hoodies. What's he doing here? Charity work? Ha! Ryan's expression shifted. The smoothness of his demeanor cracked just a bit. The laughter echoed, invasive and cruel, filling every corner of the confined space. Helen's heart raced, tightening further as she clutched David closer, trying to shield him from this sudden assault. "Shut up, man," a girl said, stepping in front of Ryan unexpectedly, her voice low yet assertive. "You don't know him." But the laughter only grew. Then, amidst the chaos, another voice sliced through. "He's just trying to buy his way into heaven," someone shouted, the mocking tone sending a fresh wave of shame through the air. Ryan flinched, visibly shaken. Helen's stomach twisted as she realized how the vibe had shifted. The shimmer of hope in his words now seemed clouded with ridicule. "I'm not. I just wanted to help." His voice trailed off, vulnerability sneaking into his confident exterior. Things were spiraling out of control. The camera of Helen's mind spun through moments past, all unkind and unforgiving. Memories of rejection and disgust crashed over her like a wave. This was how life always felt, complicated and cruel. The truth, when exposed to the light, was often overwhelming. But just then, a sharp crack shattered the air. A shrill scream erupted as one of the teenagers pushed his way to the front, bumping into Ryan. The millionaire lost his balance, teetering backward, and in an instant, chaos exploded. David's innocent eyes widened, and he yanked away from Ryan's hold. Terrified, "Get off him!" Helen shouted, panic propelling her words. Her heart thundered as she stepped forward, but another teen shoved her back. "Enough!" The girl who defended Ryan yelled again, her presence fierce, cutting through the haze of laughter and jeers. "This isn't a game. You don't know what you're playing with." That's when Helen felt it. A pulse, a foreign energy. The bus lurched violently, and in an instant, it stopped, doors flinging open yet again. A figure stepped inside, a uniformed officer glaring at the chaos before him, eyes narrowing. What's going on here? He growled, voice booming. The bus fell silent, tension thick enough to slice. Ryan straightened, shaking the disarray from his demeanor. But Helen felt something in that silence. It was the shift, the moment when the narrative began to twist. Like a snake shedding its skin, something dark, something hidden beneath the surface, began to crawl out. Could the officer's presence expose secrets? Secrets that could wrap around them all, tighter than the steely embrace of despair? The questions clawed at her mind as she stood there, breath held, sensing the chaos about to unfurl. The spark of hope flickered dangerously close to something more sinister, leaving her teetering on the edge, desperate for the truth. What lay beneath Ryan's polished surface, and what would it unearth in their lives? Ryan stood tall, but even his imposing height couldn't mask the tremor in his hands. The officer's presence thrust an unexpected tension into the air, damning, palpable. The bus, once a cocoon of desperate souls, now felt like a cage. The laughter of the teens faded, replaced by a new murmur of confusion. "What's going on here?" the officer growled, and the notes of authority sharpened his question. Helen's heart raced. Eyes darted. Nervous glances exchanged. Every passenger seemed to hold their breath, caught between curiosity and fear. Ryan instinctively stepped closer to Helen and David. It felt protective, but his eyes were darting, analyzing. Suddenly, the officer's gaze landed on him, narrowing with suspicion. "This man," another teenager started, pointing a finger. But the officer silenced him with a glare. "Stay out of this," he snapped. Ryan's breathing quickened, a sheen of sweat beading on his forehead. "What do you want?" he finally managed to utter, his voice strained yet defiant. Helen felt a shift within her. Something was off, but she couldn't pinpoint it. The officer's demeanor shifted too. He stepped forward, eyes never leaving Ryan. "We got a report about a hidden stash," he said bluntly, as if his words had the weight of a hammer. A gasp rippled through the bus. This couldn't be real. "Stash? What are you talking about?" Ryan stammered, his polished exterior crumbling like dried paint. "Drugs. Maybe cash. You're in the wrong place, my friend." The officer's hand rested on his belt, the threat hanging thick in the air. Helen's heart plummeted. The idea of Ryan being involved in such darkness was unbearable. She tightened her grip on David. The innocent boy, still clutching at straws of safety, looked up, confusion coloring his tiny features. "It can't be!" she exclaimed, the panic spilling out of her. He was helping. Helping? The officer's eyebrow shot up. Or helping himself? Ryan flinched, the glimmer of hope that once illuminated his eyes fading into a shadow. "You don't understand." But his voice lacked conviction, drifting into the silence like smoke. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. An ominous crackle echoed. The bus jerked sharply, sending passengers tumbling against one another. Confusion erupted. Suddenly, the door swung violently open again, and a second officer, much younger, stepped in. He held something that shimmered, a badge catching the dim light. "Sir, we have a situation!" he yelled, pushing through the crowd, while trying to maintain control. At that moment, the weight of secrets hung heavy. A single truth loomed larger than anything could hide it. A nightmare lurking in plain sight. Helen glanced at Ryan, his features marred by a mix of terror and something darker she had yet to understand. "Run!" she nearly whispered, more to herself than to anyone. The thought of her son being caught up in something dangerous made her insides twist with grief. The bus rocked again, the shrill sound of sirens ringing outside, cascading into the chaos. "Bloodhounds are on the way," the new officer barked. "He's not getting away this time." Ryan's face paled, and in that instant, Helen saw the cracks spread across his perfect facade. It was as if the truth of who he really was tumbled from his mouth, words that were lethal, buried beneath layers of charm. "I didn't choose this." The bus was now a battleground, panic and dread spilling out with every double heartbeat. Helen's mind raced, questions pulling her in every direction. What was beneath Ryan's polished surface? Who was he really? The answer curled dangerously close, ready to snap at any moment. And with every passing second, the fragile thread that hung between them began to unravel further. As hope faded into doubt, the weight of the unknown bore down harder than ever. In the suffocating tension, the truth, whatever it was, danced just out of reach, taunting her with its disdain. Ryan's eyes darted around the bus, the panic morphing into fear. The officer's words struck like thunder, ripping through the air. Helen's heart raced, matching David's erratic breathing. The cold grip of dread tightened her chest, blurring the edges of reason. She drew David closer, a protective instinct rising within her. "What hidden stash?" Ryan managed to say, his voice trembling. The officer's gaze held him firm, as if sealing a fate. "I've done nothing wrong," he added, but the desperation bled into his words. The first officer stepped forward, his fingers twitching toward his belt. A collective gasp filled the bus, faces shifting into masks of confusion and judgment. Helen squeezed David's hand, grounding herself in that small warmth, a lifeline against the tidal wave of fear that threatened to drown them all. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, a blinding flash lit the interior of the bus. It flashed once, twice, then a low rumble followed, shaking them to the core. Everyone blinked, stunned, as a faint crackling sound hummed in the air. It was the unmistakable sound of electricity. "All of you, get down!" the second officer yelled, a tremor of urgency in his voice. His shout broke through the chaos, snapping everyone into a frantic reality. People ducked and scrambled, Helen instinctively shielding David. And then, with a sound that echoed like a cannon, the window shattered in a shower of glass. People screamed, bodies jerked. A shadowy figure burst into the bus, a man wearing a dark hoodie, face obscured, but bearing an intensity that felt threatening. In his hand glinted something metallic, a firearm. "Get out of the way! Move!" the figure shouted, voice low and eerie, crackling with rage. Panic spiraled anew, renewed like a flood, a deep surge of terror washing through the crowded bus. David's terrified scream pierced the air. The officer lunged forward, trying to shield the passengers, but the figure moved quicker. "You think you can save them?" he spat, aiming the weapon straight at Ryan. Helen felt the world slow. Time stretched, and all she could see was David's terrified eyes, wide with confusion. She pushed through the crowd, determined, fueled by an instinct stronger than fear. "Please, don't hurt anyone. He just wanted to help," she cried, her voice hoarse but unwavering. But the assailant's gaze was locked on Ryan, his rage palpable. He's the problem. What do you mean? Ryan's voice shook, a mix of anger and despair. I haven't done anything to you. Then it happened. The figure's arm jerked back and a shot rang out. Helen gasped, the sound crashing into her like a wave. Instinctively, she dove toward Ryan. There were moments when time stopped. Then she felt it. A searing pain, like fire, shooting through her side. She stumbled. Shock flooding through her. The world spinning as she hit the ground. Gasps erupted around her. Cries of horror echoed, and David's terrified wail pierced her consciousness. In that moment, confusion spiraled in Ryan's eyes, morphing into sheer panic. "Helen!" he screamed, stumbling forward to catch her. And then, everything shifted. The bus went silent, an eerie stillness hanging in the air. Helen felt the warmth of blood soaking her clothes, dizzying her senses. Ryan's hands shook as he grasped her shoulders, his voice a whisper now, layered with an anguish that shattered silence. But as she met his terrified gaze, something shifted again. The eyes that had once glimmered with prospects now darkened with a shadow she hadn't noticed before. There was a hint of recognition, something deep hidden behind his carefully constructed facade. "Helen, you need to stay with me," Ryan urged, but in his voice lay something else, a dark edge that sent a chill down her spine. It hit her then. The truth. The gears turned in her mind like cogs in a machine. This wasn't just chance, wasn't just a random act of violence. The assailant knew him. There was a connection, a shared burden she couldn't comprehend. As the world around her blurred and darkness sought to pull her under, one thought thundered in her mind. What lay beneath Ryan's polished surface shrugged away more than just innocence. It held shadows deep enough to consume them all. The shadows loomed larger than they had before, promising chaos and danger. Would they emerge from the wreckage stronger? Or was this a beginning that would unravel everything she thought she knew? Helen's breath felt like fire sliding down her throat. The pain radiated through her side, and time collapsed into a single endless moment. She couldn't focus. The world swayed and twisted. The chaos around her blurred into muffled cries, shadows stretching like tendrils toward her. "Help! Someone! Please!" Ryan's voice was frantic, breaking through the fog. He cradled her gently, his hands shaking as he pressed the cloth against her wound. But the warmth of his touch felt distant, surreal. "David!" she managed, panic surging. "Where's my son?" Her heart raced, each thump like the ticking of a clock counting down to something ominous. "Stay with me, Helen. Just focus on me." Ryan's voice cracked, desperation coating his words. But she could see the fear pooling in his eyes, shadows from some hidden corner of his soul. The younger officer rushed to her side, while the older one confronted the hooded figure. "Get out of here!" he shouted, arms raised. The bus felt like it was teetering on a brink, a fragile boat in a storm. The tension thickened, a raw coil of dread, as the figure laughed, darkly. "Are you really that stupid?" he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "This is not about him." And with that, the unthinkable happened. The assailant tore off the hood, revealing a familiar face. A face that struck deep into Helen's heart, one she thought she had left far behind. "Jason?" Her voice trembled, shock slicing through her pain. The recognition was a dagger. It was her brother, the one lost to the streets, the one she thought she would never see again. "Why?" the bus gasped, a collective breath of disbelief hanging in the air. Ryan looked back and forth, confusion swirling. "You know him?" "Of course I know him," she spat. "He's family." A cocktail of emotions flooded through her. Anger, hurt, betrayal. How could he be here? How could he do this? Jason's eyes, once so full of life, now burned with a desperate madness. "You turned your back on us, Helen. You forgot where you came from." That simple phrase, "where you came from," echoed painfully in the cramped space. Memories crashed in, images of nights spent in alleyways, the grip of despair weaving through their lives like a dark thread. Ryan's grip faltered, horror tingling on his skin. "This is absurd. You're not a victim to be rescued." Desperation swirled inside Jason, morphing into a spiteful smile. "Oh, I'm not the victim here." He raised the gun, and all at once, everything turned stagnant. "You're the one stuck in your little fairy tale." Tension snapped tight, like a rubber band at its limit. A gunshot resounded, sharp and explosive, puncturing through the noise. But it wasn't Jason's bullet. It was the officer's bullet. A bright shot of chaos aimed at Jason. Helen's world spun as she fell back, her breath hitching. The impact slammed Jason against the aisle, sending him sprawling, his face contorted with pain and betrayal, the shock pulling Helen deeper into the undercurrent of despair. The bus erupted in pandemonium. Passengers shrieked, some dove for cover, while others froze in shock. Ryan's eyes turned to her, wide with fear and confusion. But something had shifted. The man she thought she could place her trust in now appeared to reflect the chaos of their sordid reality. "Get away from him!" Jason screamed, fury blazing in his eyes as he clutched at the wound. "You'll both pay for this." But Helen couldn't move, the weight of revelations crashing down around her. Everything turned heavy, dark. The tangled web of their shared history now lay bare, layered with secrets that clawed at the edges of their fates, threatening to unravel their already fragile lives. She looked at Ryan, a man whose polished surface was now peeling away, revealing the darkness hiding beneath. And then she thought of David, curled in the chaos somewhere, oblivious to the storms swirling around them. As sirens wailed loudly outside, another truth loomed. This was not the end. This was a beginning, a twisted path forcing them all to confront the darkness they had tried to escape. Where would it lead them? What would the cost be? The air hung thick with unanswered questions, leaving an ache in her heart that settled like cold steel. Each moment stretched painfully, and as the bus lurched once more, she could only gasp as the horror unfurled around them, sealing another layer of fear, uncertainty, and darkest secrets yet to be unveiled. Helen's heart raced, panic gripping her, as Jason's face morphed into a twisted mask of rage and despair. The weight of revelation pressed down on her. A family torn apart, buried secrets clawing their way back to the surface. Ryan, caught between fear and confusion, stumbled. "What's going on? Who is this?" His voice trembled, revealing cracks in his composed facade. The bus felt claustrophobic, the air thick with unspoken fears and shattered expectations. "Jason," she whispered, disbelief clawing at her throat. "What are you doing? Why would you—" "I'm here because of you. You think you can live your life in this bubble, pretending our past doesn't exist?" Jason spat, his pain bleeding into fury. "You think you're better than me?" The bus shook, bodies tensed, gasps erupting, confusion swirling like smoke. The officer remained focused on Jason, but it was Ryan's expression that left her shaken. She could see the incredulity morph into suspicion. "Get away from him!" the officer barked, stepping forward with authority. But Jason didn't flinch, wild eyes blazing. "You don't know anything!" He lifted his arm, gun wavering, but intent. "I'm not leaving until she understands, until she sees what she did." "Jason, please," Helen begged, fear curling around her heart. "You don't have to do this." Another shot rang out, echoing through the bus, but it wasn't Jason's gun. There was a loud crack as the glass shattered again, chaos erupting once more. People screamed, moving, scattering like leaves in a storm. Silence fell. Too quiet. Ryan's face turned ashen, eyes wide. What was that? That's when Helen noticed it, something glinting beneath the seat. A second gun, its cold metal gleaming ominously. Her breath caught, realization dawning with horrifying clarity. The pieces suddenly clicked, each jigsaw fragment falling into place, building a bigger picture. Ryan bent low, eyes narrowing, heart racing as he grasped the weapon. "What the hell, Jason?" he uttered, shock lacing his voice. But it wasn't just confusion that filled his eyes. There was something deeper, something hidden just beneath the surface. Jason's face twisted in bitterness. "Thought you'd be the hero? You've got to be kidding me!" He smirked, voice laced with venom. "You're both just players in this game." And then it happened. The bus surged again, lurched sharply as the door slammed open. A figure appeared, tall and broad, moving with authority. It was not another officer, but a man Helen recognized, someone she hoped she wouldn't see again. "Uncle Leo?" Her voice cracked, and recognition coursed through her, bringing fear right back to the forefront. The chaotic energy shifted, the focus swirling away from Jason, hovering over a much darker storm. "What are you doing here?" His eyes locked onto Helen, filled with something she couldn't quite read. "I need to talk to you, now." Ryan stood, confusion washing over him. "What do you mean?" But Helen recognized the danger in Leo's eyes, the familiarness of risk and loss twinkling ominously. This wasn't about just Jason anymore. It was about family, betrayal, and secrets so deep they threatened to consume them all. "Listen, you don't know shit about what's going on. You're all caught in something much bigger than yourselves." Leo's words rolled like thunder through the chaos, each syllable crashing against her consciousness. In that moment, reality shattered into a million pieces. Everything she thought she knew about Ryan twisted as he stood there, clutching the gun like a lifeline. But he wasn't the person she thought he was. And Jason, too. This was all part of a larger game. Before she could utter another word, everything exploded. The sound of chaos overwhelmed her, emotions igniting into one vicious conflagration. "No, you don't get to end it like this!" she screamed, but it was lost in the cacophony of terror. As the bus teetered on the edge of crisis. One thought shrieked through her mind like an alarm. None of them were safe. The line between enemy and ally vanished, leaving only uncertainty, an isolated reality within chaos. A time bomb ticking down to a traumatic crescendo, shattering any sense of control they thought they had. What lay ahead? A storm that could swallow them all whole. The silence that followed felt thicker than the musty air inside the bus. Helen's heart pounded, a steady drumbeat of fear and pain. The officer's voice rang out, but it was lost in the chaos of her thoughts. Jason's face, the betrayal, and Ryan's tense grip on the gun. The world felt like it had turned upside down. Then Jason spoke again, a strange clarity seeping through his anger. "You don't even know what he's done." His finger trembled, hovering dangerously over the trigger. "You don't know how many lives he's ruined." "What are you talking about?" Ryan shouted, his voice cracking, eyes wide. "Get away from her, Jason." But just as the tension reached an apex, a sharp, blinding flash filled the bus, cutting through the chaos with blinding intensity. Helen squinted against the light, her heart in her throat, and then it hit her. An explosion echoing like thunder and sending everyone sprawling. The bus shook violently, metal screeching, as if the world itself was tearing apart. In the wake of the blast, a strange stillness followed. As bodies hit the floor, Helen rolled over, gasping for her son. But her eyes locked onto Jason, who stood frozen, a gaping hole where his chest should have been. Blood pooled at his feet, glistening in the flickering light of the emergency bulbs. His eyes, wide with shock, mirrored hers. A gasp escaped her lips. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Jason!" She could barely breathe, thoughts racing. But then something even more jarring happened. A figure that had appeared in the doorway, the one she had only recognized from a distance, stepped into the bus. It was Derek, the man she thought she'd left behind. For good. The man her family feared and had tried to escape? He'd changed, or maybe he hadn't. The same dangerous glint in his eye flickered, and his lips curled into a twisted smile. "Surprise, babe!" Derek called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "Looks like family reunions just got an upgrade." Helen's breath stopped. How was he here? What did he want? David's terrified wail cut through the noise. In that moment, her world flipped again. Derek wasn't just a ghost from her past. He was placed in the middle of this chaos. "I trusted you," she shouted, anger lacing through the panic. "Were you behind this?" "Oh, you sweet summer child," he replied, feigning sympathy, his voice smooth as silk. "I'm just the messenger. But it looks like this little gathering has gone awry. You had your chance, Helen." Ryan turned, his shock replaced with dawning realization. "You knew about this?" "Why wouldn't I?" Derek sneered, eyes darting between Ryan and the bodies around them. "I set it all in motion. And now the moment is finally here for you to choose." "Choose what?" Ryan demanded, fists clenching. But his fear was palpable. Derek stepped closer, eyes bright with menace. "You see, Helen, I've offered you your family back, something you've so desperately chased. But it comes with a price." Time slowed as she processed his words, the deeper meanings coiling around her like a serpent. wrapping tighter, choking. "What price?" she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "Loyalty, trust, and maybe a little betrayal." His smile widened. "It's all part of the game, don't you see? This isn't over. Not by a long shot." Before she could respond, the tension snapped again. Jason, fallen and bleeding, gasped weakly. "Helen, don't believe him. He'll ruin you like he did the others." But she was too late as Derek stepped over Jason's body, aiming those words straight at her heart. And as the bus teetered on the edge of chaos, flickering lights bathing them in dark shadows, Helen felt the walls close in. Was Derek truly about to expose the layers buried beneath her life? The truths dragging her down, intertwining with every flicker of loyalty and betrayal she thought she knew? Outside, the sirens grew louder, the chaos continuing to spiral as everything unraveled. The truth loomed large, but for Helen, as she stood there between broken hearts and fractured loyalties, the only thing left was uncertainty. What had she unleashed by confronting the ghosts of her past? The room seemed to hold its breath, tension thick as smoke. Helen's heart pounded in her chest, every beat a reminder of the chaos unfurling before her. Jason's face twisted with betrayal and fury, and Ryan gripped the gun in his hand, knuckles white. Derek's smirk was like a wound, a reminder of all she had tried to escape. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, voice shaky but fierce. But Derek only laughed, a sound that sent chills racing down her spine. "Choices, Helen. I'm offering you a chance to reclaim what's yours," Derek said, every word dripping with malice. He leaned closer, the smell of old cigarettes swirling around them. "You could join me. Help me finish what we started. Bring the family back together." Panic surged through her. "You're insane. How could he even think she'd want to go back to that life?" It felt like a dark weight anchoring her, pulling her down. Ryan narrowed his eyes, defiance in his stance. "You're not taking her anywhere," he spat. "Is that right?" Derek's gaze flicked to Jason, lying still and bleeding on the floor. "Because from where I'm standing, she's already lost. Look at where your little heroism has led her." "No!" Jason gasped, a pained sound escaping him. "Helen, don't listen to him. He's lying. This isn't what you think." But the blood kept flowing, pooling beneath him, seeping through the cracks. The lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows that danced across the bus. It felt surreal, the flickering creating an almost dream-like quality, blending horror with absurdity. Helen felt the ground shifting beneath her, and for a brief moment, even amidst the chaos, hope flickered. Could someone really help? But before she could voice her thoughts, a sudden crash from the back of the bus jolted her. The passengers screamed in confusion, their faces turning, eyes wide with fear. A thick cloud of smoke billowed in through the rear door. The acrid smell choked her, and a deafening blare of alarms echoed, sharp and jarring. In that instant, chaos erupted. People pushed and shoved, desperate to escape, faces distorted with panic. "Get down!" Ryan yelled, shoving Helen and David behind him. But as they huddled together, the smoke choked them. making it hard to breathe. Amidst the chaos, Derek's laughter echoed, drowning out everything else. "This is just the beginning, Helen. You think you can control this? You can't escape your past." Then, through the haze, there was a flash. A figure emerging from the shadows, moving with purpose. "What have you done?" the voice boomed, deep and authoritative. Helen's heart skipped as she squinted through the smoke, the thick haze beginning to clear. The figure was unmistakable, an old friend. Or maybe a foe wrapped in familiar skin. It was Mark, her former lover, the one person she thought left behind for good. His uniform glinted under the bus lights, a badge of officer glinting ominously against the chaos. "Mark!" But before she could voice another question, he pulled out a device, the kind that glowed with power, a stun grenade. "Everyone out, now!" Panic surged anew as the passengers streamed toward the door. But the smoke wasn't the only danger. "Get away from her!" Mark yelled, eyes fixed on Derek with unwavering intensity. Then he pressed the button, and the deafening blast pierced the air, a shockwave rippling through the bus. What came next was madness. Everything erupted. Helen braced herself as the stun grenade impacted, an overwhelming wave crashing against her. She was thrown back, Ryan's grip slipping from hers. Screams faded, and the world blurred into a cacophony of confusion. All at once, everything froze. Helen's eyes locked onto Ryan across the fray, his face stricken with shock. And then, shocking clarity struck. In a brutal twist, she screamed, "David!" But before she could grasp what was happening, Derek's laughter rang out again, full of dark self-satisfaction. "You didn't see this coming, did you?" The smoke cleared momentarily, revealing the full horror. Helen's eyes widened as panic spiraled. The truth was trickling up from the depths. Betrayals forged in silence. Secrets buried deep. Mark, Derek, Ryan, what had she stepped into? Time warped as she fought to breathe, fighting against the darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. Everything turned to shadows and screams. Was it too late to change the course? What choices would she need to make now? As the world spun with chaos and the echoes of sirens grew louder, a crushing realization dawned. All she had known, everything she thought she understood, was slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. The stakes were higher than ever, and the weight of their ties loomed larger, threatening to pull them all under. Remembering David's innocent face, she knew this fight was just beginning. And the truth behind every secret threatening to surface lay waiting, ready to engulf them all. The smoke finally began to clear, revealing the chaos it had hidden. Helen struggled to breathe, her chest tight, each inhalation a battle against the acrid air. She was aware of Ryan and the officer near her, poised between fear and uncertainty. Jason lay crumpled on the floor, desperately gasping for breath, the reality of his injury setting in. But Derek, the embodiment of everything she had tried to escape, stood there, a monster draped in familiarity, threatening everything she cherishes. "Enough!" Mark shouted, voice booming. "Get behind me!" His eyes flicked to Helen, protective and fierce, as he moved toward Derek. Derek's expression twisted into something wicked and triumphant. "You think you can save her? You're in way over your head, Mark," he taunted, his tone steeped in mockery. "No one's going to get hurt any further," Mark replied, taking a breath, grounding himself. "Put down the weapon." But just as the tension reached a breaking point, an unforeseen twist jolted the scene. A loud sound erupted outside. It was like thunder, but it was different. An ominous rumble, followed by a blinding light, flooded in through the windows. The passengers turned, confusion etched on their faces. Suddenly, a figure burst through the front door, a face familiar, yet haunting. It was Amelia, a face from Helen's past, her childhood best friend. But this wasn't the same girl Helen remembered. The innocence had been stripped away, replaced by a fierceness that radiated from her like a wall of energy. "Get out of the way!" Amelia shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos like a knife. In her hand was a device that emitted a low humming sound, bright lights pulsing rhythmically, drawing everyone's attention. "What the hell, Amelia?" Helen gasped, nausea swirling in her gut. "What are you doing here?" "The real question is," Amelia said, eyes like steel, "what's going on in this hellhole? You didn't really think you'd get away from this, did you?" Derek's smirk faltered, his bravado deflating as he recognized her. "You shouldn't have come here. It ends now!" she bellowed, the device humming louder, the lights intensifying with colors of blue and red. In the next heartbeat, the ground shook, sending another violent tremor throughout the bus. Helen stumbled, feet struggling to find purchase on the trembling floor. It felt as if the world around them was splitting apart, launching every soul into chaos. Then, from the depths of the device, a sound erupted, a piercing shriek that rattled through Helen's bones. The entire bus seemed to rattle, as with it came shadows, figures wrapped in dark combat gear, spilling through the doors, flooding in like a tidal wave. Their presence shifted the tide, fear morphing into terror. "What have you done?" Jason rasped, still clutching his chest, his voice barely a whisper against the pandemonium surrounding them. Amelia didn't flinch, her eyes locked onto Derek. "Everything you thought you could control is over. We're here for the truth." Mark stepped between Amelia and Derek, fists clenched. "What truth?" "Every lie, every manipulation, it all leads back to you," Amelia spat. "You forced us into this game." Helen felt the world spinning, the lines of reality and her life blurring. Agony throbbed in her heart. Love, betrayal, and fear tangled together like a chaotic knot. She was thrust into a whirlwind of emotions, desperately trying to connect the dots amidst the sweeping chaos. But just then, a revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. "Wait, Amelia, you and Derek, you were in this together?" The gaze Amelia shot back at her was icy, but the truth cracked in the air. The pieces fell into place. They had all been pawns, dancing to a tune none of them truly understood. And in a moment that stretched between hope and horror, the shiny, polished surface of their lives shattered before them. Shadows loomed larger, threatening to consume them whole, leaving nothing but uncertainty and questions. "Everything has a price, Helen," Derek murmured, an unsettling calm settling over him as confusion morphed into understanding. As the sirens wailed outside and the shadows surged around them, Helen knew with heart-wrenching clarity that the absence of certainty The stillness before another storm was the scariest part of all. Everything they thought they knew was about to change forever. The air crackled with tension as the chaos surged around them. Helen's heart raced as Amelia slowly advanced, device in hand, casting a glow that illuminated the fear etched into the faces of everyone trapped in the bus. Ryan stood near her, confusion and dread swirling in his eyes, while Derek's "It's time to choose sides," Amelia said, her voice low and steady. "You can't hide from this any longer, Helen. The truth will pull you under if you don't embrace it." The shadows around them shifted as figures poured in through the open door. Faces masked and eyes set with determination. The situation turned dire, each moment pressing heavier against Helen's chest. "Get her out of here!" Mark shouted, stepping forward, his protective instincts kicking in. He glanced at Jason, still bleeding on the floor, and then at Helen. "I can't fight them alone." Panic washed over her as Helen locked eyes with Ryan. He was becoming part of this mess, a part she didn't know she wanted. But how could she turn away from him? "Run, Helen! Take David and go!" Ryan shouted, urgency infusing his words. "No," she cried, shaking her head. David was still in the throng of people, lost and confused, and she wouldn't leave him behind. In that instant, a piercing scream erupted from the back of the bus as one of the shadowed figures lunged toward Derek. The sound sliced through the chaos, but Derek twisted away, his expression shifting into rage. "You don't get to decide for me!" His hand jerked up, gun aimed at one of the intruders, and the echo of a shot rang out. Helen felt her breath catch, and everything descended into chaos. A flurry of bodies surged as people scrambled for safety, the deafening blare of the alarm merging with their screams. Jason was still there, and that realization hit her like a blow. "Jason!" she yelled, but her voice was swallowed whole by the ruckus. In that moment, she dropped to her knees beside him, a mix of fear and anguish gripping her throat. "Don't worry about me," he rasped, blood trickling from his lips. "You need to get out!" "No, not without you!" But Amelia moved closer, the glow of her device illuminating their faces. "The way out is through the truth, Helen. You need to see who you've been trusting. Fight through the noise. It's your only chance." The figures continue to surge around them, each step reverberating with menace. The scene felt like a nightmare, twisted and chaotic, yet there was a strange clarity emerging. Maybe if she could gather all this energy, the rage, fear, love, it could be something transformative. "Enough!" she shouted, forcing all her strength into those words. The chaos felt like a storm building inside her. "I won't run anymore. I'll face whatever comes." Every eye turned toward her, and in that moment, she felt the weight of all their fears. Mark nodded, a flicker of admiration sparking in his eyes. The room slowed, silence draping over the tension as the reality of her words sank in. This was her life, her choice, and as hard as it was, she wouldn't let Derek's shadow dictate any part of it anymore. "Together," Ryan said, stepping beside her. "Whatever happens, we do it together." At that moment, another shot rang out. The air exploded with sound, confusion seeping into the edges. But amidst the chaos, a shift began. Helen's heart raced, but not from fear. This was different, stronger. The truth was a storm, and in that moment, she would either be swept away or find a way to stand against it. Outside, sirens wailed louder, announcing a coming reckoning. As the figures pressed forward, she knew this wasn't the end, only a beginning. What lay ahead was unknown, shrouded in mystery, and yet she felt something ignite within. Would they find a way to overcome? With her heart pounding, she took a breath, ready to face whatever came next. Friends, this is the moment. You must subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss out on the incredible endings I have coming for you. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, theories, and feelings about this wild ride. And do not wait 1 second longer to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this ending. Your support means everything.